walking through the woods without an orange hat on. So I put my scope on it and I was like, I've never seen camouflage like that. I was like, wait a minute, that's not camouflage, that's hair.
Just in, Mike Wooley didn't just encounter a Bigfoot, he proved its existence. As the saying goes, everyone wants to see Bigfoot until they see one. Mike would be the first to vouch for how true that is. A routine hunt in the Louisiana wilderness. In December 1981, deep in the woods of Keachi, Louisiana, Mike Wooley set off on what seemed to be a routine deer hunt. As a seasoned hunter, Mike knew every bend of the logging roads, every clearing, and every hiding spot that deer might favor. It was a crisp December day, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. At 30 degrees, the air was cold but refreshing, and the clear sky promised excellent visibility. Mike arrived at his hunting spot in the early afternoon. His deer stand was located about 1.5 miles down an old logging road, far from the main highway. To avoid startling any game, Mike followed a strategy he'd used many times before, parking his truck midway and walking the rest of the way. The woods were eerily still as Mike reached his stand and climbed up. Perched about 10 feet above the ground, the wooden structure gave him a clear view of the surrounding forest. He settled in, rifle in hand, facing north. The only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds. For about 30 minutes, everything seemed routine. Mike scanned the area, his senses alert, waiting for the slightest movement that might signal a deer nearby. Little did he know, the quiet was about to shatter. The desperate doe. Suddenly, the underbrush to the east exploded with noise.
That's one of the reasons we'll never find them, because as soon as they want to disappear, they literally do disappear.
A young doe burst through the dense brushes, running at full speed. The sight was startling. This wasn't a calm, grazing deer. It was in full panic mode. The doe's flanks were dragging, her coat wet with sweat. She moved with a frantic energy that spoke of sheer terror. What struck Mike immediately was the terrain she had come through. The thicket was so dense that even a skilled woodsman with a machete would have struggled to pass through it. Yet here was this doe, forcing her way out as though her life depended on it. The doe didn't stop until she reached the base of Mike's stand. To his astonishment, she collapsed right there, pressing herself tightly against the wooden structure as if seeking protection. Mike watched, puzzled and surprised. What could have driven her to such desperation? Instinctively, Mike assumed it was a large buck chasing her. A hunter's dream scenario. A big buck on the trail of a doe could mean a prime opportunity for a trophy kill. His heart raced with anticipation as he readied himself for the shot, scanning the forest for movement. A shadow in the trees. As Mike shifted his position, something caught his eye, a strange motion. Turning his head, he froze. About 20 yards away, partially hidden by a tree, stood a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was massive, easily standing 7 to 8 feet tall. Its body was covered in thick, dark hair that glistened slightly in the winter sunlight. The figure had a powerful build with broad shoulders and long limbs. For a moment, Mike's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. It resembled a gorilla, but with a more upright stance and distinctly human features. His first thought was logical, though unusual. Perhaps someone was playing a prank. Could this be a person in a costume, trying to scare him off his hunting spot? It seemed absurd, but what other explanation was there?
Puts up trail cameras on his property to monitor the game moving through here. And one of those cameras happened to capture something that Craig can't explain.
From what I can tell, it doesn't look like a person.
Mike decided to confront the figure. "Hey, take the head off and get out of here," he shouted, his voice firm but tinged with unease. "This isn't funny." The creature didn't move. It remained perfectly still, its eyes locked onto Mike's. There was an intensity in its gaze, a mixture of curiosity and something far more sinister. The longer Mike stared, the more certain he became that this was no prank. Examining the creature. Gripping his rifle tightly, Mike raised it and peered through the high-powered scope. The magnified view brought the creature into terrifying detail. Its breath was visible in the cold air, escaping in steady clouds from its nose and mouth. The face was what truly unsettled him. It was eerily human, with pronounced features that were both familiar and alien. Thick eyelashes framed deep-set eyes, and its mouth revealed large, flat teeth, resembling those of a horse, but scaled to its massive size. This was no animal, at least none that Mike had ever encountered. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Mike's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Every instinct told him he was in the presence of something extraordinary. and dangerous. The roar and the whistle. As Mike continued to observe the creature, it suddenly erupted into action. Letting out a guttural roar that echoed through the woods, the creature revealed its sheer power. The sound was unlike anything Mike had ever heard, a chilling combination of a lion's growl and a primal scream. Before Mike could react, another sound pierced the air, a sharp, loud whistle coming from the northeast, about 100 yards away. The whistle was deliberate, almost as if it were a signal. The creature responds instantly. It turned its head in the direction of the sound and let out an identical whistle. Then, as if nothing had happened, it turned its gaze back to Mike, its eyes burning with an intensity that made his blood run cold.
There's no way a human could walk through that. But she come up to my deer stand, and what was so amusing, come up to my deer stand and laid down, up and actually touching the deer stand. She was wringing wet with sweat. She had been run, something had been running her.
At that moment, Mike realized he wasn't dealing with just one of these beings. The whistle was proof. There were more of them, communicating across the forest. He was no longer a hunter. He was prey. Trapped in his deer stand, with no clear escape, Mike's once ordinary hunting trip had turned into a fight for survival. The peaceful woods he had known for years now felt foreign and hostile, covered in a terrifying mystery that defied explanation. The question wasn't just what he had encountered, but how he would get out alive. For a brief moment, Mike tried to make sense of what he was facing. The rational part of his mind clung to the idea that this could be a feral human. He'd read about such things before, stories of people who had abandoned society and lived wild in the woods, their behavior erratic and dangerous. But that didn't fully explain what he was seeing. The creature's size, its massive build, and the way it moved didn't fit the image of a feral human. And Bigfoot? That seemed even less likely. Mike had always dismissed Bigfoot as a myth, a tall tale from California, something created to entertain or make a quick buck. It wasn't supposed to be real, and it certainly wasn't supposed to be here, in the woods of Louisiana. But no amount of rationalizing could change what was unfolding before his eyes. Whatever these beings were, they were real, and they were after him. The warning shot. Mike knew he couldn't stay in the deer stand. It wasn't safe. He had to get to his truck, the only sanctuary he could think of at that moment. Without wasting another second, he leapt from the stand and took off running. The westward path to his truck suddenly felt impossibly long, every step fraught with danger. As he sprinted through the woods, the sound of crashing brush behind him spurred him on. Against his better judgment, he risked a glance over his left shoulder, and what he saw sent a jolt of fear through his entire body.
And it was tall, about 7-8 foot tall, and it was black, real hairy, like a gorilla. And I knew it wasn't a gorilla because there was no circus in town, and I knew it hadn't escaped, and I knew we didn't have no gorillas running loose.
The creature was chasing him. It moved with a terrifying speed, its massive frame tearing through the underbrush like it wasn't even there. Small trees and shrubs bent and broke under its weight as it bulldozed its way through the forest. It wasn't just following him, it was hunting him. The truck was finally in sight, and for a brief moment, hope flared in Mike's chest. But as quickly as it came, it was replaced by dread. He realized he would have to stop, even if just for a moment, to unlock the truck door. That moment could cost him everything. The creature was too close. It would catch him the second he paused. Mike's mind raced as he ran. He needed to do something, anything, to buy himself time. Then an idea struck him. He could fire a warning shot. Reaching the tailgate of his truck, Mike didn't hesitate. He swung his rifle around, aimed at a tree to his left, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the forest, a sharp, deafening crack that momentarily broke the tension. The bullet struck the tree about 7 feet up, sending a spray of bark flying in all directions. Some of that bark hit the creature square in the face. It recoiled, momentarily stunned, and stopped in its tracks. Mike realized how close he had come to disaster. If the creature had been just a couple of seconds faster, the bullet would have struck it in the head. Narrow escape. With the creature momentarily halted, Mike seized his chance. He scrambled into the truck, locking the doors in record time. His hands shook as he fumbled with the keys, but somehow, he managed to start the engine. Slamming his foot on the gas, he tore down the logging road, his tires kicking up dirt and gravel in his wake. Relief began to wash over him. He had made it. He was getting away. But then, in his rearview mirror, Mike saw something that made his stomach drop. Another figure appeared on the road behind him. It was the second creature, the one that had signaled earlier. This one was just as massive and imposing as the first. For a moment, the two creatures stood together in the middle of the road, watching as Mike's truck disappeared into the distance. They didn't chase him, but the sight of them standing there, side by side, was burned into Mike's memory forever. As he drove away, his mind raced to process what had just happened. The face of the creature haunted him. It wasn't just animalistic, it was disturbingly human. The light brown skin on its face looked like a deep suntan. Its jawline, its forehead, its teeth, even its eyelashes, were all shockingly human-like. Mike had never seen anything like it.
It looked really, really human. The face was human. The eyelashes, I could see the eyelashes, you know, the eyes, the teeth were big teeth, flat teeth like our teeth.
Despite its towering frame and obvious power, there was something in its expression that made him hesitate. He couldn't shake the feeling that pulling the trigger would have been wrong. Something told me this ain't right, he later reflected. It's not the right thing to do. A warning. Mike knew he had narrowly escaped a potentially deadly encounter. His years of experience in the woods hadn't prepared him for this. As much as he loved the wilderness, he now understood that it held secrets far beyond his understanding. For anyone venturing into the woods, Mike had one piece of advice. If you ever find yourself in their presence, remember, this isn't a fight you can win. As the memory of that day replayed in his mind, Mike felt a deep sense of gratitude for having made it out alive. The experience had changed him forever. What he had once dismissed as a myth was now a reality he could never forget. Mike isn't the only one who's had such an encounter, though. Here are a few other detailed accounts of humans coming into contact with Bigfoot. The Alaska Encounter. In the remote wilderness of Alaska, Doug Hodgichek, a wildlife researcher and filmmaker, had an extremely scary encounter while setting up cameras in the dense forests near Prince of Wales Island. Known for its sparse human presence and an abundance of wildlife, this area has long been a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings. Doug was capturing footage for a documentary on nocturnal animals when strange events began to unfold. Initially, he noticed peculiar tree structures, massive branches twisted and interlocked high above the ground. These formations were unlike anything he had seen before, as if constructed by immense strength and deliberate intention. One night, while reviewing his footage, Doug spotted a shadowy figure standing upright at the edge of the clearing.
You guys hear that? Listen. Back here. Back here. Sound like brush moving back there.
The creature's sheer size was staggering, standing at least 8 feet tall. It was covered in dark fur, and its eyes seemed reflective, glowing faintly in the dim moonlight. But it wasn't just the visuals. Sudden guttural growls accompanied by rhythmic wood-knocking sounds filled the air. Doug described the vocalization as a deep rumble, resonating in a way that sent chills down his spine. This encounter, documented in Expedition Bigfoot, remains one of the most compelling modern encounters. The Provo Canyon sightings. In the serene yet eerie woods of Utah's Provo Canyon, 2 hikers came across something they would never forget. While trekking along a quiet trail, they noticed movement ahead. Initially assuming it was a bear rummaging near a tree, they began filming. As they got closer, the figure rose, revealing its imposing stature. This creature wasn't a bear. It was something far more unnerving. It stood on 2 legs, towering over the hikers. Its broad shoulders and elongated arms were reminiscent of a primate, but its humanoid face set it apart. The hikers froze, their initial awe quickly replaced by fear as the creature emitted a guttural growl, a clear warning to keep their distance.
Done.
Now we can hear you.
The hikers backed away, but managed to record the encounter on their phones. When they reviewed the footage later, the details were undeniable. The creature's gait was fluid, its arm movements deliberate. Unlike bears, it didn't lumber, but moved with precision, a hallmark of something more intelligent. Experts analyzing the footage highlighted the distinct lack of a snout and the presence of human-like features. This encounter is featured in The Proof Is Out There and remains one of the clearest modern encounters ever caught on tape. The hikers' raw footage and emotional retelling add a layer of authenticity to this chilling story. The Washington Campground Intrusion. In the thick forests of Washington state, a family camping trip turned into a nightmare when an uninvited guest made its presence known. Known for its rich Bigfoot lore, this area has been the site of numerous sightings. This particular night, the family noticed unusual wood-knocking sounds and distant whistles. Initially dismissing them as animals or other campers, they didn't realize the gravity of the situation until morning. At dawn, they found massive footprints surrounding their campsite. Each print was over 18 inches long, with a width far exceeding that of any human foot. Even more unsettling was the stride length, suggesting a creature of immense size. That evening, the situation escalated. While sitting around the campfire, one family member spotted a dark silhouette watching them from the tree line. As the figure stepped closer, its size became apparent, standing well over 8 feet tall, with a muscular build covered in thick matted fur. Its eyes reflected the firelight, giving it an otherworldly presence.
Here's where we'll do it from. And it's time to howl again.
When the father shone a flashlight directly at it, the creature stepped back but let out a deep guttural roar. The family quickly packed up and left, later reporting their story to local Bigfoot researchers. Footage and recordings of the sounds were analyzed and unbelievable Bigfoot proof uncovered, where experts said the evidence was compelling. The Georgia hunter's terrifying standoff. Deep in the North Georgia woods, a lone hunter came face to face with a creature that defied all logic. This seasoned outdoorsman, familiar with the local wildlife, had set out early in the morning to track deer. However, the forest was unnervingly quiet. No birdsong, no rustling leaves. This unnatural silence hinted that something was amiss. As he scouted a clearing, he saw movement in the distance. Initially thinking it was a bear, he froze, observing the creature. But as it stepped into the light, the hunter realized this was no bear. Standing on 2 legs, the creature was massive, covered in reddish-brown fur that seemed to shimmer in the morning sun. Its face, though, is what truly terrified him. It was eerily human-like, with deep-set eyes, a pronounced brow ridge, and what appeared to be intelligence in its expression. The hunter instinctively raised his rifle, not to shoot, but to scare the creature away. The being responded by letting out an ear-splitting roar, loud enough to make the ground seem to tremble. Paralyzed with fear, the hunter slowly retreated, never breaking eye contact. Eventually, the creature turned and disappeared into the woods, but the hunter was left shaken, his belief in the unknown forever changed. The Allegheny Trail Camera Sighting. One of the more interesting Bigfoot encounters occurred in 2007 when a hunter named Rick Jacobs set up a trail camera in Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest. Expecting to capture images of deer or other typical wildlife, Jacobs instead found something extraordinary when reviewing his footage. The trail camera snapped a series of photos featuring a large gorilla-like creature. The figure moved through the frame with a distinctive primate-like gait, its silhouette strikingly different from the usual animals in the area.
That was right here beside us. Whoa. Ryan, there's something hot in the water. Just went by. Right there. Do you see it?
Jacob submitted the footage to the Bigfoot Research Organization, which analyzed the images. They suggested it could be evidence of a juvenile Sasquatch. The BFRO's experts pointed to the creature's body proportions and the behavior captured in the footage as being distinct from any known animal species. However, skepticism surrounded the encounter as well. Officials from the Pennsylvania Game Commission argued that the images could be of a bear suffering from mange, which can cause animals to appear gaunt and unrecognizable. Despite these counterclaims, the case has remained a compelling piece of evidence for Sasquatch enthusiasts and researchers. From Table Rock Lake. One more recent Bigfoot encounter occurred near Table Rock Lake in Missouri. Nathan, a resident of Branson, Missouri, shared his chilling experience. Growing up exploring the woods around his neighborhood, Nathan and his friends were familiar with the area, having mapped out trails and chosen camping spots. However, one evening, they ventured out to a cove on Indian Point to hang out. Nathan, feeling confident, decided to try his whistle, only to be met with a terrifying scream-like growl. The sound, described as a cross between a woman screaming and an aggressive predator, made it clear that something was wrong. As Nathan and his friends rushed to escape, the crashing sounds of something moving through the brush behind them intensified, and they realized they were being followed. They managed to reach safety on a nearby road, but Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that what they had heard was no ordinary animal. Each of these stories shares common themes: remote locations, intelligent behavior, and a blend of human and primate features. Whether it's the chilling vocalizations, the massive footprints, or the raw footage captured during the encounters, these accounts fuel the enduring mystery of Bigfoot. The existence of this hidden creature remains unproven, yet the consistency of these encounters adds weight to the legend. With advanced technology and growing public interest, the truth about Bigfoot may one day be uncovered.